Hey, it's me, Brooks. Welcome to Heal This. So today we're going to get real. We're going to talk about some things I've never talked about before, and I'm going to share them with you. And then on the next episode, I am talking with my friend Tammy, and we're going to dig a little deeper. So, I am an ex-Mormon. What does that mean? Well, let's go back, okay? I grew up in a little tiny town. I was very heavily influenced by my grandparents, and I loved them so much. And I really admired my Nana. She embodied this woman that was powerful, and she was a mother and a grandmother, and she worked and she did all of these different things in the home. And I really wanted to be like her. And so when I was really small, I really felt really strong. Like I really wanted to have a big family. She had 6 kids and thought, I want to have 6 kids. I really had this strong feeling that I really wanted to have a lot of kids. I wanted to be a wife and a homemaker. And I really valued all those things very much. So and then I have to bring into the story that when I was about 10 years old, and I'll never forget this day, I was watching a show on PBS, and I was running around the house just, being a 10-year-old pretending. And the show that I was watching on PBS ended. And then another show came on, and it was very informative about how harmful smoking is for your body. In the show, it started to talk about how if you smoke, here are all the things that can happen to your body, your lungs, and you could even die. And it really freaked me out. Like I got really scared. And so the reason why it scared me so much was because my mom smoked and my grandparents smoked and some of my aunts and uncles smoked. And so I was around a lot of people who smoked, and it really freaked me out that something could happen to them because they were smoking. And I even shared it with my mom, of course, and she just kind of was like, yeah, okay. So that happens. Then when I'm about 12 years old, my parents got divorced. And this totally shook my whole world. I had a really great childhood, nothing of significance, just normal day-to-day stuff, hanging out with family, going to school, playing sports, and it was good. And then they decided they were going to get a divorce. And it was shocking news to me. I had never even seen them fight. I didn't know anything was wrong, and I was pretty naive at that point. And it really, really shook my world that they were going to get a divorce. And this was years and years and years ago. It wasn't that common, really. I mean, it was common, but not as common as it is now. So laying that foundation for you, really wanting to have a strong family and have a lot of kids and be a wife and a mother and a homemaker. And then also having this really strong desire to not hurt my body with outside things, right? And really not being very educated in health and wellness. And then to have my parents get divorced. It basically was a really great setup for at about 15 years old when I was in high school, had this huge crush on this boy, and he was Mormon. And so he and I started to date, and then I basically was introduced to the Mormon church. And when I started to go to the Mormon church, I just thought everyone had it all together and so friendly, and here were all these families and lots of children. And so I really was open to whatever they were introducing to me. So I started taking the missionary discussions. That's what it's called. I think they've changed it now to like missionary lessons. I'm not really sure, but at the time it was the discussions. And they basically walk you through the foundation of the church, what it's based on, and some of the commitments that you are going to make to then be in the church. And my 15-year-old self only heard that families are forever, through living worthy and being sealed in the temple. Now, if you've never heard any of these things before, you're going to be like, what the heck? Because they have their own little language that they talk, and you just start to get used to it because they figure everyone else needs to catch up with how they say things. I was looking for community. I was looking for family. I was looking for those things that I, mentioned earlier, right? A big family and taking care of my body. They also have the word of wisdom. And so the word of wisdom talks about no drinking alcohol, no smoking, no drugs, no coffee or tea, no caffeinated drinks, no hot drinks. Um, Go to bed early, wake up early, eat meat sparingly. And there's some other things, of course, but those were the big ones. And um, all of this sounded really good to me, especially at 15 and not understanding all of the other commitments that I was going to make. So I got baptized and I started going to the church. And one of the other things that you need to know about me is that innately I am very obedient. I really want to do things right and have integrity and keep the promises that I've made. And I'm very loyal to that. And so I was a really great catch for the Mormon church. So I fell right into all of that. And, growing up, the center of my little town, there was a church, and I believed in God and I knew about his son, Jesus, but I never really went to church. We never really practiced any kind of religion. And it was more just kind of be good to each other and keeping somewhat the commandments, but no going to church every single Sunday, no worship or whatever. It was just kind of like higher power was there. And I said my prayers and my little childhood self, but that was it. When I went to go join the church, basically, and get baptized and make all these covenants, um, nobody was saying, don't do it, And then also, I didn't have anything I had to unlearn to then learn new things. It was just, okay, this sounds good, This Joseph Smith guy, he knows what he's talking about, So I joined the church, and not too long after I joined the church, so, I'm 16 or 17 years old, I just start hearing through lessons at church and understanding that there's a whole lot more to this church than I realize, that I've made covenants in a church that I didn't realize, that the goal was basically to get me to 18 and go through the temple to make more covenants and to be married, right? That I would wear long underwear and that I'm a vessel to bring souls into the world. And that's my job. And a lot of the history of the church is extremely controversial, and I just didn't know about it. And I was young, and that's not always the best excuse, but that's where I was at. So I made all those covenants. I worked through the answers, right? If something didn't make sense, then of course I'd go to the bishop and talk to him and try to work it out, or read the scriptures, or be extremely prayerful about it, or go to the temple and pray for a really long time. And all of that's super strange. And we're going to talk about it more in the next episode. But I really feel like this is important that I share with you. And the reason why I left, and the reason why, first of all, I am grateful for some of the things I learned. And I'm also really unhappy with the way that the church is run. And I don't believe it's true. And I also feel like my experience has helped others who have gone through a faith crisis or a faith transition, because what I learned, that even though some of my situations are extremely unique, anyone who's in the Mormon church knows that there are unique situations in the church. And that, but when you're coming out of it, when you're starting to ask the questions, you're going down the rabbit hole of asking the questions. And I think that that is probably the most common reason why people leave the church, is because something happens and they say, there's a glitch in the matrix, or there's a huge crack in the foundation and this doesn't make sense. And so if this doesn't make sense, then does this make sense? And if this isn't true, is that true? I think that's pretty common when people are extremely dedicated to a religion, and then they have a little something happen in their life, and then they start to say, do I really actually believe these things? And what do I believe? It's one of the things I do help people with, is the transition of maybe being in a really hardcore religion to being spiritual. And yes, there is a big difference. Religion is an institution. It is a place where you go to learn practices to hopefully become closer to a higher power. And all of that is based on doctrine, and all of that is different depending on what religion you go to. But what it comes down to, plain and simple, is that a higher power, in my opinion, is love. And I do believe that we have heavenly parents, and that God, source, the divine energy of everything, exists and may not look the way that we think or that we're taught, and that we should be open to what that is. Because as soon as we think we know all the answers, we're totally wrong. We are going to be knocked off that podium and shown that, hey, I'm so much bigger than you realize. And just be open to what that looks like, because you can't comprehend it in your human brain. So I hope you will check out the next episode with Tammy and I. We're really going to share with you some things that we've never talked about before. So anyway, all of this is part of healing, honestly. And I hope you'll join me on Heal This.